least.
Oh my God. Don't we wish?
Oh my gosh. How she managed to write and still say,
Oh, is that Mr.?
Hey, Josh. How you doing?
fine.
All right, I gotta get our camera adjusted. There we go.
Did I read the book? Yes, I read the book. It was,
Did you?
Just checking. Yeah, I did. I was telling Randall, I don't know what Edith Wharton was. I had this vague memory of hearing about Edith from when I was in high school, but I don't think I read it. And I thought she was kind of a grumpy 17th century English kind of, and she was, I really enjoyed her. I thought it was great. I thought it was
We
great.
both were hard of hearing.
Okay, yeah, I'll face y'all and the camera should be able to pick up all of us.
Okay.
Well, when we did our last book club, the audio quality was a little in and out. We're still working on the tech situation. All right.
I'm camera shy.
Oh, that's okay. That's okay.
Come on, we're not scared.
why did you hear me call?
Oh, okay.
You might
Cough drop or me?
Not cough drop, yeah.
You need to move down here where we can see you and hear you better.
Oh, trust me, when I cough, you'll have no problem hearing me.
Well, I don't know about that. These ears are like going.
All right. I don't know if anybody else is coming, but I guess we can get started. So what was y'all's experience of reading the book?
Well,
What was the? I'm
What
sorry.
was your experience of reading it, you know? Did you like it? Did you not like it?
Oh, I was very impressed. I was very, very, very impressed. I thought it was great writing. I thought it was presented well.
yeah.
Her use of language was good. Her characters were very distinctive, especially the fat grandmother and the writer, the guy that edited he was a brief character, but I just thought, I was just terribly impressed. I just thought it was great. I liked the ending.
Hi.
Hi.
You know, it wasn't, she had kind of a sweet and sour ending, you know, that
Oh, yeah.
he could have met her again, and you wanted to meet her, you wanted to get together, but yet she did the, I don't know, not the unexpected thing, but
The right.
well, she did what the tone of the story, they were giving each other up all the way to the story, and at the end, he gave her up,
Yes,
you know, that way too, and I thought it was great. I wish she'd done a novel on the grandmother. The grandmother was so delightful and so honest and so, I mean, she just ruled the roost and she just said whatever she felt like, and the rest of them were kind of being proper, you know, and I just loved her. I wish Edith Wharton had written a novel.
I'm fine.
With the grandmother as the main character. That'd have been a great novel. But I just thought it was great. My only criticism was she said over and over and over again, the person was blushing. She must have used the facial blush and she must have used that a dozen times, but that's neither here nor there, I guess. Hi there.
Well, it certainly gave you a feeling for society in those days. And aren't we glad we're no longer living that way?
Indeed.
I'm sorry, what was the last talking point?
Oh, I was just kind of leading off with, like, what was everybody's experience of reading the book, you know, what did you like, what did you not like?
Okay, I have a thought.
I enjoyed the first part of the book, reading the first part of the book a lot more than the second part, for some reason. But in the second part, it seemed like there was just a lot of detail, not as much happening. I did rush to finish it, actually, we had to skim through, but having seen the movie, so knowing, that helped me get the gist of the book for me, was that he was adhering to society mores or intricate little details that proved to be unimportant, not as important later. I think the book, it ends in about 1903 or so.
I don't remember if they say the year, but it ends 26 years later because his son is 26.
Okay,
So
yeah. And so, the gist of that I got from the movie, which nothing in the book didn't interfere with that, was that he was somewhat of a coward because he couldn't live up to his own.
Yeah, one thing I noticed about that, there wasn't really a villain. You know, it wasn't good guy versus bad guy, or it was just kind of something that happened between people and how they dealt with it. You know, he didn't mean to fall in love with her, and she didn't mean to fall in love with him, and they weren't trying to. You know, it wasn't like Beaufort where he was taking kind of he was a mercenary or whatever you want to call it. They were just two people that got caught up in something they couldn't really control, and they did their best to control it. I think that's what they didn't jump into bed, and they didn't run off to Europe, and they tried to, and they were kind of bound by the society's rules, but that nobody really did anything evil. They were just kind of victims of circumstance and being around each other. So they just fell in love. That's all. You can't help falling in love sometimes.
yeah, I think the villain was, was society and the social hierarchy they were living in. So what was your experience?
I thought it was kind of sad that he spent his whole life with the wrong woman, and she knew.
Mm-hmm.
The one.
Yeah.
What was your experience reading it?
Well, I just enjoyed learning about the mores at the time, and being grateful that I'm not stuck there, although in our own ways we still are. We judge people. A friend of mine told me that she was a teacher in an exclusive private school, and there was this one young man who was from another country, and he had a terrible youth, and he gave everybody a hard time, and she did her best to help him, but finally he was expelled, and this one teacher, as he was leaving the last time, saying, "Thank God, this is why we send our children here, so they don't have to be around people like that."
Oh.
Unbeknown that there are people in her world that are hard to get along with, and so things have changed, but people are people.
Well, I guess I was just thinking, I guess the villain would have been Count Olusky, because he was the one that caused her to leave him and come to America, or whatever the deal was, with his shenanigans and his whatever he was. And everybody kind of decided, yeah, he's a villain, and that's why she's here and all that. But that was just I guess the initial impetus that got the ball rolling. But I keep thinking about when Elizabeth Taylor and Richard Burton were on the set of Cleopatra, and they got together. And Liz Taylor came out and said, "I want to tell our fans that we didn't mean to do this. We'd fallen in love, and that's all there is to it." And that made kind of sense, I mean, they just fell in love, and they weren't in love with their wives or husbands anymore. They were in love with each other, and they discarded them. And of course, later on, they discarded each other for somebody, so I don't know what that means. you know, when you get emotion taking over a situation, it's, well, you can't help how you feel, but it's what you do about it that matters, I guess. And I thought the examination of their dilemma, so to speak, was very good on Wharton's part. I thought she had a lot of insight. A lot of her narrative was kind of explaining what was going on, and I thought it fit in real well. And you know, they say don't explain and show don't tell and all this, but I thought it fit in real well. I thought she did it real well, worked well with the novel, and she was a very wise woman and very observant on what was going on with human nature, I think, and it was just, I was terribly impressed with it, I really was.
Yeah, so I hated it and I hated all the characters, but I'm happy to be outvoted. You know, I'm glad that my opinion is not the predominant one.
Well, what did you think?
I thought that the protagonist was absolutely insufferably arrogant, self-centered, not someone I would ever want to be around.
You're talking about the guy.
Yeah.
Newland Archer.
Yeah, and that he was sort of trying to look beyond the prejudices of the society that he was living in, but not actually to recognize the humanity of other people. He got as far as oh, society's standards are silly, but not ever actually as far as women are people or working class people are people.
But he did say, you know, women should be free like us. Remember when he said that?
He did say that, and
That's why he fell in love with Ellen Wolenska, you know, his May's cousin, and he admired that, and in his heart, I think that's what he wanted. But he didn't have the guts to go against society's mores, even though he didn't agree with them, and that they were just all in the details, and just things changed anyway. And he acted like he was trapped, but he wasn't trapped. He went ahead with his marriage.
He definitely
really loved Ellen.
Well, if he had gone against the society and run off with her, at the end, he wouldn't have had the lovely children, he wouldn't have had the life, you know what I'm saying here?
Well, I don't, there are more options available
Yeah,
to him
there's
than
a
that.
thousand destinies, but at the end, she made it look like he made the right decision. He got the lovely son, the architect, the other wonderful son, the wonderful daughter. The wife had been a faithful and wonderful wife, and if he'd run off with Madame Lewinsky, they'd been like the Duchess and Duchess of Windsor and sitting around Bermuda for the rest of their lives doing nothing.
How do you know?
On to that, the thing is free will. Everybody's got free will, right? Free will, free will. Trouble is you don't have free will because the consequences overshadow a lot of things you do. Like somebody makes me mad, I got the free will to kill them. Well, that's great. I go to the electric chair. What kind of deal is that supposed to be, you know? So you got free will, but you don't really have free will.
What did anyone think of the ending?
Pardon?
What did anyone think of the ending of the book?
Yeah, I was kind of rooting for them to get together and just have a nice talk, you know. But you know, Wharton chose to have him walk away, and I think they were kind of walking away from each other all the way through the book in a way. So he walked away, and that was the end of it.
I think, you know, they showed that in the movie, and I was just wondering what anyone else's take on that was. To me, you know, it's an individual take. To me, he was just still being a coward. He couldn't live up to his own, what does anyone else think about the ending?
Yeah, it could be looked
Anyone
at
else?
as a coward. Yeah, you're right. I never thought.
We got some quiet ladies over there.
Oh, hey, I didn't see you come in.
What do you think of the ending, Tosh?
Being.
Yeah.
I read it as an entertainment. I don't, you know, tear the characters apart and question why they did this or that.
Yeah, to me it was kind of open, it could be open to
It was
individual.
entertaining, and it was a
interpretation.
different time, and
Yeah.
the author, but what is more impressive is this is the author. She was gorgeous,
Can you hold that up for our audience at home to see?
and look at her waist. How did she manage to write and still, but she wrote a lot of books.
She did.
Yeah, not only, this is travel, I got this from the Queen show. She wrote some travel, stories as well.
Yeah, she had an interesting life.
Yes, and she was brought up privileged life. But from what I gather, she had a very bad marriage.
Yes. Yes.
Edith Wharton had a bad marriage.
Huh?
Yes, yes, she
Oh,
was
did she?
separated from her husband.
And her husband embezzled her money or something and lived with a mistress of.
And the book was written from the standpoint of Newland Archer, from the standpoint of a man, so, that was very, very skillfully done.
Do you think she did a good job of writing from the standpoint of a man?
I think so.
Standpoint of a man.
Newland Archer, she was inside Newland, it was as if Newland was, narrating, the book.
Well, the narration was so strong. I mean, Wharton did so much narration and explaining what was going on, and I kind of got, I didn't really, I mean, it was written from his viewpoint, but somehow it didn't seem, it was so much overlay from Wharton that I just couldn't, it
You
didn't
don't think
strike me as being all a man kind of viewpoint. It was just, I mean, it was his voice and his, but it just didn't strike. Her narration was so complete and so in depth and so insightful that it kind of overpowered the, I don't know, what the tone or something, to me anyway.
Well, that kind of brings up the next question that I had. So in early drafts of the novel, Edith Wharton had Newland and Ellen run away together, and then be miserable together, and ultimately separates. And I thought that was interesting, because I thought, well, yeah, that makes sense. They would never have actually been happy together, because she was a free spirit and he would have never actually respected her. But it's interesting that it's like, even at the end, he didn't realize that he never saw Ellen or Mace for who they were. But I do think it was interesting that initially she wrote that ending and then wrote the version that we read where he stays with May.
And another thing, if they'd had the long engagement, like it had been originally planned, instead of getting married so soon, if they'd had a long engagement, I think both the Countess and what's his name, they would have caved in, and they'd have gotten together, and he'd have broken off the engagement, and then they would have run off, or whatever people did back then, because they would have had. When they moved the marriage up to a month later, they didn't really have time to get an affair going, or to get a love affair going, or a side affair, any kind of.
Yeah, but he was the one that moved it out, because he wanted to
Yeah.
make sure that didn't happen. Again, to me, he didn't have the guts to live up to his own beliefs or feelings. But just a side note on the movie.
Yeah, but don't you think he was kind of between the rock and the hard place?
I think he was.
He
You know,
put
we're
himself-
making
he
a
put
coward
himself
out of him
there,
because he
yeah.
did the right thing.
Yeah, he put himself there, but,
I
he
don't
could
see
have
it
used
that way.
Ellen's situation as an excuse. But I just wanna add that the movie, to me, the actors in the movie were all perfection as far as these characters are concerned. I mean, I thought they did a wonderful job, especially Winona Ryder as May. I mean, they're just the subtlety, and Michelle Pfeiffer as Ellen Walenska, and Daniel Day-Lewis as Newland Archer. Does anyone else agree with that?
Yeah, I do. It's been a while since I saw it, and I saw the movie before I read the book, but I had very fond memories of the movie.
And the subtle arrogance of Newland Archer, and May Welland kind of portraying someone who pretended to not know some of the things that she knew. I thought that was really very skillfully done.
Yeah, I think.
She knew about it all along, because at the end, she told her son when she was on her deathbed, she told the son all about the Countess and what's his name? What's the protagonist's name?
Oh, Newland.
Newland,
I
yeah,
forget.
Newland. I don't know why they get names you can't remember. But I mean that, and she told the son that, and the son told the Leland when they were in Paris, said, well, you had this big affair. Mom told me that your heart was where the Countess was with the Countess, but y'all, you know, and so I don't know, she, you know, the May seemed to know all along what was going on.
Yeah, they indicated that in the movie too. I don't know at this particular point when she announces to Newland that she's pregnant, and that was the timing.
Yeah, that was
that
the
was
kicker.
very interesting. Was that in the book too? I had to skip ahead.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that was the kicker.
Yeah, that was really,
changed everything.
Shows
Once
that she
found out
knew,
was pregnant.
because I don't know if she actually was pregnant at that point.
Yes, she
But-
See,
suspected
he
it.
was gonna tell her in the library there, he was gonna bare his soul and tell her he was in love with the Countess, and before he could do it, she popped up and said, guess what, I'm pregnant. And boy, that blew his mind, and that changed
So,
everything.
yeah, he was always, it was a strong example of something he was doing all along, was allowing other things to make his decisions. But that was the kicker.
I think May did know the entire time. And Newland had several indications that she knew the entire
Yeah,
time.
there were several people that kind of saw him here and there.
Well, but I think that was really why I found Newland so insufferable as a character, because he kept realizing, oh, May is smarter than I give her credit for.
He did
And
that,
then,
yeah.
like, the next paragraph, he would immediately forget and go right back to, oh, yeah, May sure is dumb, huh? Like,
And the grandmother said to him, or said to somebody, said, I told Ellen that you and Ellen should have gotten married, you know, and she tossed that off. So that was another little marker that Wharton threw in there that, and plus these people did nothing but gossip. That was their main pastime, was gossiping. So naturally they're gonna talk about anything that even looks slightly, you know, they suspect everything, and, you know, that's all they did seem to do. Every conversation was gossip.
right, I mean, yeah, their lives are basically devoted to gossip and, like, social niceties, because, like, well, they were the idle rich, right? They didn't have to work. They had servants waiting on them hand and foot. And I think that was, like, also kind of why I found them so insufferable, was that they were like, oh, you know, woe is me. I have ennui as an idle rich person. And it's like, have you noticed that other people have real problems, buddy? But I'll try not to be so negative.
Too late.
The novel is told primarily from Newland Archer's point of view. How does he change over the course of the novel? How might the same story be related from Ellen or May's point of view? How does each central character see the others?
How did each character see the other character?
Mhm.
Well, with Newland, I think that he was a bit daft in that he wasn't catching on. Or, well, like you said, he did go back and forth about what he thought May knew. But that was, you could almost feel the self-deception creeping in when he would kind of discard that thought. later, it's like, oh no, she's just a simple girl. But there were hints. But it was, to me, it was more of what he wanted to ignore or be true.
And Ellen was not one of them.
Yeah, that's true, she was
Not
the
one of
outsider.
what?
Them. The group, the
Mhm.
rest of the group.
She was exotic, you know, she was from another world basically, and so she stood out in that way.
Oh, right, so how might the same story be related from Ellen's or May's point of view?
From whose point of view?
Either Ellen or May.
Yeah.
Oh,
I don't think Ellen was as in love with Newland as Newland was in love with her. She actually had several suitors, that she had, had several choices.
Yeah, I think that's true, and I think Ellen was, you know, a free spirit, and she wouldn't have, she would never have been what Newland wanted her to be anyway. And yeah, from May's point of view, I think it would have just been like an extended stream of, my husband is in love with my cousin and he still thinks I don't know.
well, you can be in love with two people at one time.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely.
You know.
But do you think that Newland was in love? Do you think that his feelings were genuine? Do you think he was genuinely in love with
Well,
her?
I think I think he loved Ellen more than he did May, but he was kind of duty bound and honor bound, and he did love May, but you know the hotter flame was Ellen, but he was committed, and he's tied in by society, the New York society, that, you know, if he'd have done that, it'd been scandal. Remember, they said the worst thing they hated was scandal.
Yeah.
And he was that, the mores and norms and all those, the rules of the society, he'd have been bucking the current big time if he'd dumped May and run off with, he couldn't ever come home again. I mean, you know, he'd had to live in Europe and .
I have a little sentence here I'd like to share from the book on that particular part about how he felt about May after having been married. Now he was smitten with compunction, yet irritated that so trifling an omission should be stored up against him. That was something that May had just said after nearly 2 years of marriage. He was weary of living in a perpetual tepid honeymoon, without the temperature of passion, yet with all its exactions. So he was starting to be annoyed and irritated as a result of his own decisions.
Yeah, he felt locked in and bored and all those kind of things.
And he also desperately tried to remake May in his image and was annoyed that she, you know, had her own opinions, so.
Well, May was white bread, and Ellen was rye, pumpernickel, raisin bread, all combined in one, I guess.
So this book was written in 1925. I just have a couple of sentences I'd like to share about what she talks about the future.
I think it was 21.
Yeah, it was 21, I think.
21, okay.
Yeah.
So they were of the brotherhood of visionaries who likewise predicted the building of ships that would cross the Atlantic in 5 days, the invention of a flying machine, lighting by electricity, telephonic communication without wires, which is interesting because the first telephones were with wires. Wireless has been even more recent, and other Arabian Night marvels. So it just shows to me that, you know, those visions were there, you know, even back in 1921, maybe earlier.
So this next question that I have is kind of relevant to that, to comparing the beginning of the story to the end. So consider the following. In the writing of fiction, Wharton acknowledges that the first page of a novel ought to contain the germ of the whole. So in what ways do the Age of Innocence's first 2 chapters contain the germ of the whole novel? Not only in the opening scene, but also statements of individual characters, such as May asking, why should we change what is already settled?
May asked what?
Why should we change what is already settled?
May asked Newland that?
Yes, about when they should get married.
Oh, okay, right,
Yeah.
right.
So do you think the first 2 chapters kind of lay out the rest of the book?
I think they do. Like I said, I enjoyed the first part of the novel better, much more.
Well, they introduced still can't remember his name, whatever his name
Newland?
is. Newland.
Was it Newland? He was
Newland,
living
yeah,
in
they
America.
introduced Newland, they introduced all the characters basically at the opera even, and, you know, there was Ellen was there, and May was there, and Newland was there, and I think his mother was there, and I think his grandmother was there, and I don't know, everybody, you know, and I think Beaufort showed up pretty early, and Leper the Lecturer is what I call him. Seemed to be his main role in the novel was his reputation for. But anyway, I don't know. I'm not sure if that. I mean, she introduced all the characters, and you got a feel for Newland's personality, and you got a feel for the situation. You know, he was engaged to May, and there was a lot said about Countess Lesky showing up, but I'm not sure if, I guess you had kind of a foreshadow that Newland was attracted to the Countess, but it wasn't anything definitive, so I don't know how to answer that question.
Well, I know the movie does a good job of introducing everybody, especially the visual medium and the set design and the costumes and everything, combined with using parts of the novel as the narration for the movie. It was very well done.
What did you think, Lou?
Yeah, I thought that the first 2 chapters pretty well established the characters. I thought it was interesting that, like, Newland established early on that he wanted his wife to be clever and educated and have her own opinions, and then, of course, immediately he went about rejecting her opinions. I think it's interesting that Newland kind of expressed this opinion that, oh, women should be free to make their own choices and have their own opinions. But what he basically meant was, you know, women should be free to do what I want them to do.
Yeah.
Things have changed.
Some things have changed. Yeah. What role do minor characters, for instance, Julius Beaufort, Mrs. Manson Mingott, the Van der Leydens, Newland's mother and sister Janie, and others play in this novel?
Well, I thought the way that his sister was introduced, or the part his sister played, it was very minor, but it was kind of supporting from the wings of the stage, so to speak. I mean, she was supportive, but she wasn't really dominant. She was used to kind of support Newland, but it was very sparse and not very often. I thought the grandmother was great. I just loved it.
What was her name again?
Oh, Mrs. Mingott?
Yeah, I think
Yeah, I loved her.
She
I
was
just
an
loved
important
her.
supporting character because she tied a lot of things together, because she was
Yeah.
watching everybody, communicating with everybody, giving feedback, and so it, as far as exposition is concerned also.
Yeah, she was kind of the exchange center, or
Yeah.
that's not the word, but her personality, I just loved her. I thought she was great.
Okay. What about Julius Beaufort?
Well, he was what you could call a villain. You know, he was catting around with the women, and he
Oh, was
made
he
some
seeking-
illegal financial things or something like it.
Was he seeking Ellen Walenska?
Yeah, he was chasing her, yeah, you're right.
Yeah, he was trying to, he was flirting with Ellen, and he was also known to, to be a bit promiscuous. But of course, what got the people to turn on him was that he lost all his money.
Yeah, that's it, you're right.
In the panic of,
The affairs didn't matter, it's
Right.
the fact that he lost all his money.
Yeah, 18, what was
The
it?
Panic of 1873 was his downfall. And then the Vanderlydens, what role did they play in the story?
They didn't make much of an impression on me. I couldn't even tell you exactly what they did, or where they were.
Yeah, I can't either offhand.
They were like the old money family that everyone looked to for authority.
Oh, okay, as a standard bearer.
Mhm.
Did they lose money too, in the Panic of 1873?
No, like the way that the book was written, it was like only Beaufort lost money, because it was his fault. So it's, nobody else in the story really seemed to be affected by it. Alright, anybody else have thoughts about the characters?
Well, I like the way some incidental characters she had introduced, like the writer that was Newland's occasional friend, I think he wrote for a magazine, but he tried to be a writer and failed, but he was completely different personality-wise and in his demeanor and the way he talked and everything from the society crowd. So that was kind of a contrasting character. He was completely different from he was earthy kind of, guy next door kind of guy.
An artist, and at that time,
Yeah, he was just
they looked
kind of
down, or in that society,
Hey, could you bring me one of those Cokes, please? I was gonna get up, but why make a scene? Thank you.
at that time in society, or that group, they looked down on artists, performers, things like that.
And the other character that was really different than all the rest was the grandmother. She didn't care what anybody thought, and she just said what she felt, and she was kind of different.
One question that popped into my mind in the first part of the novel was that he named all these families, these first families of New York, these old families, and then there was the newer wealth, and
Thank you.
I was wondering where she got the names of those families. Were they real? Did she make them up? I mean, they were obviously based on
Real people, but that were
Families.
probably
Well, they
not
were
everyone.
Dutch.
There must have been,
Some of them
okay,
were Dutch.
corresponding families
Mhm.
that if you looked hard enough, you'd figure out, who they were.
But no, even back then, there were lawyers, so I don't think she used real families.
But there were a lot of Dutch families, like Roosevelt's a Dutch name, and, there were, excuse me. But a lot of Dutch settled up there, so, Van de Griff and Van Sant and Van this and Van that. And
I was looking for reviews, or like writings about the book, and I found this article that I found interesting by Sarah Blackwood called "What Do We Do with the Age of Innocence in 2020?" And
100 years
yeah.
after it was written.
Yes. So, and she's writing a sort of an analysis of characters, and she says, Newland Archer is highly, and I mean highly, ironized. Many critics remark on his arrogance at the start of the novel. He gazes upon his lovely fiancée, May Welland, seated in a box across from him at the opera, and muses how he did not in the least wish the future Mrs. Newland Archer to be a simpleton. He met her thanks to his enlightening companionship, to develop a social tact and readiness of wit enabling to hold her own with the most popular married women of the younger set. But the truth about Newland Archer is that he never really grows away from that self-centeredness. He never learns to see either May or Ellen clearly from start to finish. He uses both of them as mirrors. Wharton nestles hints about May's intelligence and perceptiveness throughout the story. The sliver of light between Archer's perspective and the narrator's illuminates much in the novel. At the end, when May and Newland try to face each other honestly, he seems to finally comprehend his wife, her blue eyes wet with victory. But a sensitive reader who has remained attentive to how the novel signals Archer's willful obtuseness about his wife has cause to pause here. How much did May know? How did it make her feel? And is a victory the most apt name for what has just happened here? So, what do y'all think? Was it really a victory for May?
It might have been a victory for May,
Mm-hmm.
in the sense that women back there, like we had discussed with another book, they absolutely had to get married.
Mm-hmm.
And they didn't have as many choices, and so I can understand why she didn't want to let him go, that she wanted to maneuver things, because all things being equal, then what would she have done otherwise? If she had said, okay, I know you're in love with Ellen, then what would she would have had started from square one, maybe, to find another mate. So from her perspective, it may have been a choice that was good enough and something worth being a little bit, not direct and open with, because her position is different from Newland's. And so Newland Archer, actually had more choices in society, but saw himself as being boxed in.
Mm-hmm.
That's how I saw it.
Yeah, well, she did offer him the opportunity to break off their engagement.
Right, and so that's very ironic.
Mm-hmm, and she did, I think
She
that,
wasn't totally open, but she, with who she thought it was.
right.
But she did say that, yes.
Yeah, and I did think there were a couple of mentions that she was from a prominent family and a wealthy family, so she probably could have had other choices, but
But she had, a bird in hand, as they say.
mm-hmm.
Yeah, she would have had to start from square one, and if she could maneuver this one, which we can see that she did,
Mm-hmm.
she probably figured that was good enough for her.
Right, that makes sense. And then Sarah Blackwood mentions another part that I did love. Archer thinks of himself as an artistic person who sees and appreciates Alan Olinska's sophisticated aesthetic taste. He is, however, mistaken about himself. During a particularly suggestive moment in chapter 22, Newland has sneaked away from May and his in-laws to go in search of Ellen while vacationing in Newport. He comes across a frilly pink parasol resting outside the house he thinks she is in and brings it sentimentally to his lips. But of course the parasol is not Ellen's. How could it be? Ellen Olenska would never carry a frilly pink parasol. That Newland Archer doesn't recognize this, 3/4 of the way through their intense romance, is an important signal that Wharton does not want readers to disregard. Yeah, that just cracked me up, that he thought the parasol was hers. And then like only later was like, right, that would never be hers.
That's a typical mistake a man would make.
You know, Newland, I was thinking about that other character, and when you said Newland was into the arts, and he was into the arts, he tried to keep up with, you know, who was writing who and which paintings were which and all that, and that kind of brought us around to his friend the writer that he'd meet with occasionally. So in a way, I think below the level, because they said the only two things available to the rich people were business and law, and it was pretty apparent that Newland wasn't really into the law thing. I mean, every time he went to work, he was bored or doing something silly that he didn't intrigue him. So I think he wanted to be the writer.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, I didn't realize that.
But
And-
again,
and
he didn't
that-
have the guts to live
Yeah,
up
and
to
the
it.
other character was almost his alter ego, and that's who he wanted, you know, he wanted to be a writer, he couldn't be a writer. He wanted to be with Ellen, he couldn't be with Ellen. I mean, he was kind of losing all the way around, you know, and.
So he was
In a
kind of like
sense.
the women in his own way.
So it's almost like Newland is a tragic character, you know, a victim of bad luck, I guess you'd say, or the wrong careers or the wrong path. He was born into privilege and it's not doing him any good, I guess is kind of a way to look at it.
Well, that's certainly the way he felt about it.
Well, I mean, that really hasn't changed much when you have men who have started a business and brought it up to wonderful things, and he expects his children, even today, to follow in his steps, and they're saying like, oh, and so they become wastrel.
Yeah, be careful what you wish for, you might get it.
Yeah.
They don't have the appreciation for it because they didn't have to start from square
Right.
one to do it. Yeah.
And that wasn't their inclination, and they were not allowed to follow their inclination.
Right.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, he kind of like laments that he can't be a writer or a politician or something more, you know, dramatic, but yeah, he certainly is unsatisfied with his role in society, but also, you know, doesn't change it, so.
And I think he's a little envious of Ellen also,
Yeah.
because, you know, she's a woman but yet she is in a way free to do whatever she wants. True, she doesn't fit into that particular segment of society, but on the other hand, she is able to maneuver, manage, and at the same time do exactly what she wants to do.
Right,
And so I think he's kind of envious. He's attracted to it and envious.
right.
Yeah, and she was kind of the symbol of rebellion all the way along, because, you know, they wanted her to go back to her husband, and they wanted her to do this, and they wanted her to do that. And she more or less did what she wanted to do in every situation. She didn't go back to the count, and she didn't go with Newland, and
Yeah, and so she was looked down upon in a certain way, but she didn't have the same level of opprobio that Newland would have had he changed horses in the middle of the stream, because he was more prominent and expected, even though he had the freedom to do it. There would have been less judgment on her for what she did than if he had done something similar.
Yeah, and I thought it was interesting that her husband, that like even in this whole story about how, oh, people didn't say unpleasant things out loud, that like even in the context of this story that, her husband, like her, you know, horrible abusive husband was just kind of whispered around, and no one actually came out and said, the things that he had done to her. It was just alluded to in this letter.
And another thing,
Broad strokes.
Mm-hmm.
that they were so hung up on appearance that the husband, the count, was gonna give Ellen a bunch of money to come back and just pretend to be his wife, or just to show up at the meeting, the parties or whatever. And I thought that was, how ludicrous was that, you know?
It might be ludicrous, but that happens all the time.
Yeah, well, I mean, that was and none of the New York people thought that was horrendous at all. That was the solution, you know? So
Just
she's
not
gonna
for
come
Ellen,
back
yeah.
and be his wife in name, and he's gonna give her a bunch of money, and it's almost like a business arrangement, you know? It had nothing to do with marriage or anything else.
Right, but at the same time, she could have been subject to being batted around
Right.
as well.
Right. I think she knew that, you know, maybe, maybe it wasn't as simple as it seemed.
Right.
Well, the French gal was in there too somewhere.
About,
Yeah, I see, okay.
basically would have ruined her life. And that was why she couldn't get divorced, because even though
Yeah.
her husband had mistreated her so horribly, if she had gone through legally with a divorce, it would have been speculated that she was having an affair. And that would have made her entire family outcasts of society.
So in the end, I know her husband had died at some point. Was she divorced then before he died?
No.
Oh, okay.
No, she
Separated.
yeah, she was separated, but she didn't divorce.
And she had the grandmother's money.
Mhm. So the way she lined it up, it worked out the best for her.
Mhm. So,
What do you think about it?
No, I was looking at it. No, I was just listening. I was just listening.
come on, we're talking too much.
I looked at it from a standpoint of today as opposed to that time. And as you said, nothing changed.
Yeah.
Rich people still act that same way. I mean, they got their own little, I call it secret
Because people
society.
haven't changed. It's just like when I went to the old jail museum, and there upstairs is a museum from the 30s to the 50s. They said, oh, back then police would camp out on 17 and catch speeders. Like they don't do that today. Do the same thing today.
Yeah,
And I'm
who knows
here,
what changes.
I look at it, I read books just for entertainment.
Me too, I don't pick it apart like this.
Yeah.
You're asking questions I read right over.
I had a friend, she's passed away, but this sort of thing would drive her crazy, and looking at art and people saying, and this means, and that means, and she would just say, it's a tree!
Well, I read so many books that this was just one of, that I called and they said you were reading, so I read it. But probably since I read that one, I've probably read 10 more.
Yeah.
So it's like, okay, was that person in that book or in this book?
Yeah, that's why I can only start reading book club book like a couple days before the meeting, otherwise I'll
Oh,
forget
okay,
it.
it has to be recent, yeah.
And two, we listen to the audio books in the car.
Oh, yeah.
And
I can't listen to news, and I'm not a music person, so recorded books are what I listen
Like
to.
you talk about giving up lives, that, like in the news, you got this Prince Harry and the movie star Harry.
Yeah.
He wanted his freedom and his anonymity, but yet his destiny was to be part of the British royalty. And he chunked all that, you know, and I'm not sure he's ultimately gonna be happy with being a private citizen, you know, with this movie star wife, and they think they're gonna be anonymous and live regular, normal lives. I'm not sure
That's gonna
he
happen.
wouldn't have been better off staying in the royalty thing. But,
I just
you know,
think
that's
those
neither
people ought to
here,
get a
that's
job.
what's to be seen, but sometimes when you buck fate, bad things happen.
You can't totally escape it, you know.
Yeah,
when
you
you're
can't
there.
always tell, but sometimes when you're swimming against the current, it's hard to do.
Were there any more points that you were gonna cover, or was that it?
Yeah, I've kind of gone through all of the stuff that I printed out to discuss. The sort of just like, I didn't enjoy it. I found the just sort of casual prejudices very annoying. Like, yes, the maid is Italian. Why is that a problem? Why do you?
What was that? I forget, I didn't catch the word used.
All this, the repeated, like, I understand that, like, at the time, you know, Italians were looked down upon, but the repeated, like, can you believe that this maid is Italian? And
But she was just expressing how those people felt towards.
right,
Yeah.
right, a lot, like, it was repeatedly, or like, how many times was it necessary to mention that Mrs. Mingott was fat? Like, it was just
How
constant.
many times did she mention people's faces were blushing and coloring?
Yeah.
But I got into the writing. I thought she had one line with Mrs. Mingus had her bow tie, had her bonnet tied between the two chins. You know, and another time, great lines in there. Like one was the creeping green mold of propriety, you know, and stuff. And what was another one? The finely tuned lines on a wrinkled face or something like that.
Yeah.
You just had a lot of great writing.
Layla, so your problem was not really maybe with the book, but with the period, with the society, because that's what she was describing, and you just didn't
That's
want
what
to
the
read
author-
about that.
That's what the author had those same issues, which is why she wrote the book.
Yeah.
Well,
because-
I didn't think that she did have those same issues. Like, yeah, I mean, I've read lots of books, you know, about things like that in society, but like from a more critical angle versus just taking for granted.
Well, she was entertaining us at the same time, which is why I think she won the Pulitzer, was because she addressed those issues and entertained me at least for the first half of the book. So when somebody is accomplishing two things or more simultaneously in a very skillful way, then I admire that. So to me, that's why, you know, it seemed annoying to you, but she was also entertaining us. And just as a sideline, the movie Thelma and Louise, I think, is a masterpiece because it does accomplish two things simultaneously. Very entertaining, and it has something to say.
And like you
Education.
said, the setting, I mean, you could take the boundaries of that society. Well, if you put it in the army, think of the boundaries are there in the military. Think of the boundaries that are in like a prison thing. I mean, everything's got boundaries and you know, so the setting could have been anything, not just 1870 New York snobby society, you know.
But I would like to point out one aspect of that society that I think is a little bit unique and kind of lost. And when I was watching the production or behind the scenes thing from the movie, The Age of Innocence, Daniel Day-Lewis was pointing out that those carriage rides, like in those huge black carriages, and a couple like making out, or, I mean, it was like, there's something about that is like no other, that there doesn't exist today. I mean, you'd have a limousine or a car with a driver, I suppose. But it's not the same thing. They had no room, and the driver was up front with the horse, and they're going over by, I mean, it was just an atmosphere of something that was that could be very romantic, that he was pointing out. I thought that was interesting.
But of course, she also, even though she was writing this book, and she did point out the problems in the society, she still had to live in it.
Right. Yeah, I think to your point that my problem was with the society, it's more that like the critics and reviewers are like describing it as, you know, Edith Wharton wrote this criticism of the prejudices of the society, and I was like, is it though? Because it kind of seems like she's just uncritically replicating the same.
Well, she could have
societal
just covered
attitudes.
it up and made it.
Yeah.
Well, look at the book that we read by good old, well, Mr. Rochester, not Rochester, but Mr. You know, the earlier, set in the earlier age.
Sense and Sensibility.
Thank you. Think about that. That was not written. It was written. It wasn't written critically either, but it put on a kind of a. Oh, he turned out to be a really nice man, and he did all these nice things, but he did just sit around on his hands too. So, I think that she wrote as critically as she could and still live.
And still be entertained, because
And
if
well,
people aren't
and
entertained,
live in that world.
yeah, and if people aren't entertained, they're not gonna keep reading or watching or
I mean,
whatever.
she spoke to it as much as I'm sure she felt she could.
I mean, she was born, let's see, she was 23 when she wrote this, and it was written in 1921. So it was about a world that was just before she was born, of course, so she could learn a lot about it from the people and everything, and to recreate it. And so she had an opinion about that world and noticed the difference and wanted to point out the differences. And she did that, and of course, writing a novel, she's going to do that in a way that to me, it's like funny. There was a lot of chuckles for me, especially in the first half of the book. I mean, even some laugh out loud moments. So I thought that she accomplished that
Do
So
you
what
think
made
that she,
very well.
I'm thinking that, given the time that it was written, and it's often said that art depicts life, that she wrote it in that tone so that she could protect herself.
Yes.
You know, I'm putting this out there, I'm making fun of this, but yet still, if you confront me about it, I can always go to, it's just art.
Well, yeah, I'm sure there were several levels
Yeah.
and reasons why she did that.
That's definitely, it could be that she may have felt differently, but wrote it, you know, to be palatable.
And also at different points in the novel, looking at things through other people's eyes in a way, even though it was Newland Archer, and he was thinking about how they viewed things or did things. So all these different viewpoints she was combining and sort of just chuckling at them. That was my take on it. But watch the movie if you haven't. Anyone else not seen the movie? I have seen it. Okay, so.
Who was in it besides Michelle Pfeiffer?
It was Daniel Day-Lewis as Newland Archer and Winona Ryder as May.
That's a little spicy.
Mhm.
That was a little spicy. Ramona playing May.
Oh, yeah.
But
Yeah.
she came
She's
over
good.
that way.
Yeah,
It was what?
No, I was saying that was her character from the book. It was, you know, edgy. That she wasn't, she didn't care what they actually thought about her, but she did consider what her grandmama thought.
Are you talking about Ellen?
Uh-huh.
Yeah, that was Michelle Pfeiffer.
Okay.
Well, her grandmother had the money.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
why.
Yeah.
Who played May?
Fuck her too much.
Who played May?
Winona Ryder played May and
Winona.
Michelle Pfeiffer played Ellen Waleska. But he was, that scene in the carriage where Newland and Ellen are making out he said that was just so romantic in a way that modern movies are not, where they show too much, go too far.
Yes, they do.
And so, but he was just saying, and I agree with him, that passion expressed in the carriage was just even more so because of the subtlety and the covered carriage, just the whole environment.
Yeah, that makes sense, that like it has a more romantic atmosphere than like a car or, you know.
Yeah, the
Something.
the space, yeah.
But that also shows the difference between now and then, because, now, if you were to show that, it wouldn't sell.
Well, when was the movie made?
Well, about 1992, 3, somewhere in the 90s.
So about 30 years ago.
Yeah, but people were, I mean, it's a period piece, so people get into the,
Yeah.
Yeah,
to the setting.
but what I'm saying is, what you talked about the limousine and the privacy,
It wouldn't be the same space, like in a limousine, that would be the closest thing. But, you know, like, but the driver would be in the same space,
well,
I
it
guess.
got those blackout.
Right, but in a carriage, they're actually out front, and you could have total privacy at least for a while, and, I mean, you couldn't do everything, but, I mean,
Right.
there was a lot that you could do and have that privacy.
Yeah, I know I saw the movie as a kid, and it was a formative experience for me.
How?
I was very enamored of Winona Ryder and her pretty clothes.
Oh, yeah, and her, she did archery,
Mm-hmm.
that scene where they're, and, you know, she's just so perfect and so
Mm-hmm.
confident, and he's looking at her and thinking, boy, she's a simpleton, and it wasn't true.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I did like those scenes where, you know, May showed that there's more to her than her husband knew.
And how she confronted him
Mm-hmm.
in the movie and the book, without directly confronting him, but giving him the message that she knew something was going on, but not saying it's Ellen. She was referring to someone else, but that was her way of doing it.
That's one thing I noticed, the old saying, the old Nicholson line, you can't stand the truth, and, you know, nobody can stand the truth, that's the truth. But it seemed like Ellen and May both were very open and very, I mean, there was, I'm afraid my relationships, everything is unspoken, and you're supposed to guess what's going on and all this, and that both of them laid it out in so many words, and I'm not sure that was true to life. I mean, you know, it worked in the novel, but most people can't stand the truth. You can't tell them the truth. They can't stand the truth about themselves. I mean, ego just won't allow criticism, and I was just kind of, it struck me that these two women were being so honest and so insightful and so outspoken, and in my experience with human beings, if you tell them they did something wrong, they don't take it to heart and try to correct it. They attack you for, you know, bringing it up. So it just struck me that I'm not sure in real life, especially back then, they would have been so honest or gotten away with being so honest or whatever I'm trying to say. Does anybody know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, I think that was, but I think that was partly sort of,
Literary license.
well, I was thinking like in terms of the standards at the time, because like May pointed out that Newland had an affair with a married woman,
Yeah.
and that was just kind of like the standard that like if a man,
That was a pattern for him.
yeah, that like if a man had an affair with a married woman, it was like looked down upon, but he could move on from it, whereas if a woman had an affair, you know, her life would be ruined.
Yeah.
Well, thanks y'all for coming. Has anyone started reading the next book yet? What is the next book?
Franny and Zoe.
Anyone?
Anyone started reading it?
You
Well-
have, she has. She's answering by holding it up.
Oh, yeah, all right. Yeah, and then, well, next week, we have recommendation group, so if y'all wanna come recommend
Next
something.
week, I will be there.
All right. And then next month is, Franny and Zoe.
And the month after, the Lost Brothers.
And the month after is the Lost Brothers. With the Lost Brothers,
What's that about?
it's a nonfiction about, three little boys who went missing.
Yeah, 3 brothers.
Oh, I remember you speaking about it.
Yeah, and there is one, is there one copy, physical copy, and then the rest are on?
It's on Libby, and then, the library will be getting a physical copy.
And there is another physical copy floating around that I own and Robin, finished.
Alright.
She'll bring it back to me tomorrow, so if anybody needs to have that sooner, check with me.
Alright, yeah, and that'll be our June book club book, and, so yeah, we're a little limited on copies for that one, but we have,
You can also buy it on
The Lost
Amazon.
Brothers?
The Lost Brothers,
Who's the
What,
writer?
June
who's
book?
the author of the Lost?
Jack L. Hay.
Jack L. Hay, yeah, alright. And that's June, and then, May is Franny and Zoe.
I have a friend, from high school, we grew up in South Minneapolis, and she's reading it right now. She still lives in Minnesota. Well, she lives in Monticello, which is the town that the family moved to after they moved from North Minneapolis. So I wanna invite her to join in on the Zoom.
Yeah, awesome, yeah, we don't get enough people, we didn't have anybody on Google Meets today, so definitely anybody who wants to participate virtually, that would be super awesome.
It's true crime,
Mm.
so,
I like true stories, I do
you
too.
know.
Alright, well, thank y'all for coming.
Martha, I wanna ask you, were you able to hear Katie? Could you hear Katie? When she was talking, were you able to hear her with your hearing aid? I'm checking.